Throwaway clothes cause a textile mountain. Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
Stitching up Mother Nature. People pose in clothes at homes and shows made of manufactured materials such as polyester. But suppose what everyone throws may not decompose, and the environment is left to fester. Well, it seems that a mountain of discarded clothes in Chile's Atacama Desert went viral recently. What's remarkable about this is that it's clearly visible from space. Yes, the mountain is increasing. And it's incredible, isn't it, that the fashion industry is accused of being guilty of contributing to this. Many
Yeah.
fibers, such as natural fibers, will decompose, but a lot of the man made fibers, polyester, nylon, and others, do not. Clergyman Pete, there are many solutions here, and from a business perspective, it's big business, but it's also a dirty business. How do we solve this mounting problem?
Well, this is a problem that didn't really exist not that very long ago. So I think we can look to the past to see how the problem started, to see what was different in the past. In this country, we're in the UK, Mark, in case you didn't notice, the wearing of clothes used to be something that you conducted over a lifetime. Perhaps a suit that you had, you'd have your entire life and then leave it to your son. It used to be that clothing lasted, and the way it did that was you made alterations to it, or you mended it if there was any sort of rip. You had it cleaned. That's what you did with clothing. But that's changed, and the reason it's changed is well, the obvious thing, I guess, is changing fashion. You change your clothes with the fashions. I know, Mark, being a bit of a fashionista, you might do
Of
that,
course.
but there's also they're so much cheaper. So it's, if you have a rip in your clothes, do you have it mended or do you buy a new one? I mean, they're cheaper because of mass production, and then just the way of making materials has ended up being cheaper. Um, the if it's such that it could easily be cheaper to buy a new item of clothing rather than have it fixed, or at least comparable in price. However, just think about what I said earlier about being mended. Well, you could do that yourself. So if people were to mend their own clothes, that would surely be cheaper. If they were competent at it, it would be cheaper than sending it away to be mended and buying a new item of clothing. And you could even make your own alterations to clothes, to change the fashion. Often it's the cut or the silhouette of some clothing that changes with the fashion, like a suit becomes slimmer or perhaps baggier, and you can make the alterations yourself. So a change in attitude is what's needed, a cultural shift where you get used to mending and altering your own clothes.
Well,
There
indeed,
you go.
and yes, and it's interesting how attitudes have changed through the years. In some cases, there were forcing factors, and you mentioned about the United Kingdom. So here's a thought: during the conflict, 1939 to 1945, yes, the British ministry issued a make, do, and mend pamphlet. This was encouraging households to basically provide useful resources of materials to repair items, including clothing. So if a button disappeared, sew it back on. If there was a rip, just simply repair it with some careful stitching. And people made do with what they had, effectively using the resources they had to be much more sustainable. Well, we've called it that now. But of course, this continued for post 1940s Britain into the 1950s. So for many, many years, many people make do and mend. That was the idea. But as consumerism has set in, products have got cheaper. And fashion has also contributed to this, meaning that if you throw it away, you buy something new and it's much easier. But the thing is that this is now having an impact, isn't it, Clergyman Pete? Because
Mhm.
there are landfill issues, not just in Chile, incidentally, folks. It's throughout the world, United States, United Kingdom, Europe, and many other places throughout the world. And this is a growing problem because a lot of the materials that we're using do not degrade, and that's the problem. And so the mountains are continuing. But there is a little bit of hope, folks. Yes, scientists are actually trying to work hard on seeing how they can actually decompose even plastics, polyesters and nylons, etc. So, for example, a US-based scientific organization is actually working on the basis of how they can make waste products to be decomposed by using chemicals, but chemicals or enzymes or bacteria that can actually break down the plastics. Now, this is going to take a bit of time, but what I'm encouraged by, Clergyman Pete, is those retailers that are actually using more sustainable products. So, for example, people are making clothing out of bamboo, as an example, for underpants. And also for things like sweet corn, where they can actually extract the fabric from the sweet corn plant and actually make clothing. Now, this, of course, is experimental, and it's not the mainstay of British or even global manufacturing and fashion today. But I am encouraged by the fact that there are alternatives, and maybe the key to this is education. And maybe also, I would like to even go as far as to say, maybe now governments need to get a little bit stronger by encouraging manufacturers, either through law or legislation, to move away from polyester-based or plastic-based materials to more sustainable materials. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they could certainly put encouragements in the way, I don't know, tax breaks, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
You could certainly do that, and certainly the governments could have a role in education in the sense of just using the British government's famous nudge unit, or the other ways that they encourage people to make behavioural changes that they use, for example, to encourage people to take the vaccines that were on offer recently. We could use that for this method, encouraging people to keep wearing and then mending their own clothes. I suppose the wearing of the new types of clothes, that's down to the manufacturers and the companies to encourage you if they're trying to sell them. But if you're going to be wearing bamboo underpants, then that could be sold to you, depending on whether you kept a panda at home or not. They like bamboo, don't they? But whatever, that's down to them for their marketing, and that together, encouragement to wear clothes for longer and mend them, or have them mended, I guess. But if you're in the habit of mending it yourself, it ends up being more sustainable financially. And then I guess changes such that when you do throw them away, they do degrade, and so they don't end up being a textile mountain.
Yes, here's one example where, for example, Spinnova's fibers can be recycled and respun, but the firm's interim CEO, Ben Selby, acknowledges that for this type of circular textile loop to work, brands and customers will need to change. The whole industry needs to start better at collecting old garments, and that can be recycled. So here's another option. Numerous fashion retailers could actually have a take-back scheme, meaning that if there are some things that are just beyond repair, actually exchange them and have them as a discount. Why not? I mean, the point here is that I think there needs to be a better recycling system. It's not just education. It's not just the people who do things in the home, but maybe working together as a whole ecosystem, let alone obviously using products that, are much more sustainable or less environmentally impactful. But I agree. I think that the good thing is that there are these initiatives, but what we don't want to have to see, and I know that you're encouraged by the idea of space exploration, but you don't want to be seeing those big clothing mountains from afar. Certainly, my goodness, what happens if we started dumping the moon with your your unwanted wardrobe? Yes. I don't think we want to get to that.
No, we don't. Well, I guess that's just as fashions change, so it comes time to end the episode here with Mark and Pete. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you're going to consider mending your own clothes in future. Let us know. Just go over to markandpete.com. Make sure you subscribed, and then you can comment on this and every episode. But that's it for Mark and myself for this week. Catch you next time.